everyone. Welcome to another episode of Career Uninterrupted. I'm your host, Lochan, founder and CEO of Off Experiences. This season has been all about women, career, and parenting. As we explore the interlinkages between these topics at length, it was imperative for us to bring the perspectives of people who are actively in the midst of it. Today, we have two very interesting professionals with us as guests, Swati Geriani and Akanksha Kapoor. Swati is an alumnus of IIIT Allahabad and I am Bangalore. She has 10 plus years experience in companies like Qualcomm, BCG, and Zomato, and is currently the strategy lead for consumer laptops at HP. In addition to all these hats, she's also a mom to a 1.5-year-old daughter. Akanksha is a former journalist who forayed into public health, first in the social sector and then in the corporate world. Currently, she's busy raising two babies, a 2.5-year-old girl, and another baby, as she calls it, an initiative in the parent toddler space. We're talking to them today as new or young mothers who have chosen to redefine their careers to suit their new circumstances. What are their reasons? What changed for them? And what helped or didn't help their returnship journey? We will explore all of this and much more in this episode today. But one thing that is definitely common among both of them is that they were both part of our working mom cohorts at Off Experiences and have been an active voice in helping us continuously shape the program. Thank you to both of you for being here and welcome to this episode.
Thank you, Lochan. Thank you for having us here. I think it's such an important topic to even talk about, and it just feels great to even be here and speaking to fellow moms. And I would be super happy if you're able to contribute even 1 cent to it.
Sure, thank you. Before I get into the more serious questions, just wanted to quickly have the audience know a bit more about you. What has been your professional journey like? How did your career look like before maternity, before being a new mother? Maybe either one of you can start.
Sure.
I'll go.
Okay.
Akanksha, do you want to go
Okay,
first?
I'll go. Right. So where it began is I was working for about 10 years, like you said, Lochan, as a journalist first, and then I moved into public health before I became a mother. And honestly, while it sounds like I'm fast forwarding through that time, it now seems like everything just moved really fast until that day came, and I distinctly remember um, finding out that I was pregnant, and that's something that we'll go into as we go along. But um, post maternity, I got back to the same job. I was working in a corporate in public health, and yeah, after that, I spent some time doing it. Resigning a couple of times, getting overwhelmed a couple of times, and then finally, I decided to move out. I am no longer working with them full time. I'm still consulting with them part time, and I'm also trying to raise a new baby from scratch. And yeah, we can talk about that more as we go along.
Thank you. Swati, a bit about you.
Yeah, I think what Akanksha is saying, now the entire journey of last 10 years seems like it's in a jiffy, right? Like, no matter how many roles you had done so far, be it as a daughter, as a wife, as a friend, and so on and so forth, and have been in a lot of corporate roles before this. I was working with BCG, which is like a management strategy consulting firm. And after that, I joined Zomato. I joined at the time where it was more in a 0 to 1 phase. And starting from strategy role, I moved into the product role, which was like a really critical role, and continuously being on call. And so I was actually leading the homepage and the search pages, which are like the first thing that the customer sees. So pretty critical pod, and you had to be always on toes. So was in a very fast paced life, along with the other relationships that we were managing. And then there was bam. And then we became a mother. We will talk about that. But yeah, that's briefly about me. And now currently I am working as a strategy lead in HP, Hewlett Packard. I've made this change roughly about 7-8 months back. Yeah, and I have a little
Awesome.
daughter. She's roughly about 20 months now, and it is, I think, the most beautiful phase that I'm living right now.
Awesome. Awesome. So, uh, while maybe both of you had some plans earlier before you had your kid that you are going to be a mother someday and you're going to be a parent someday, but did you ever think that your career is that things might change after your career? Were you prepared, or did it just kind of hit you out of the blue and you were like, what just happened? So, Swati, if you want to share that first, maybe.
Yeah. So, before, and I will probably go back to the memory lane when we were thinking about having a baby, and I did have those conversations with peers, who had treaded the same journey. um, and I must say that, everybody did mention that, it's a big change, it's a big change, and of course, like, we were aware. But I honestly feel that the shape and the form and the size of the change is just so big, it's so enormous, and it is so different for every human being that you cannot be prepared. uh, and I mean, you cannot be 100% prepared. And today, even, when I speak to some of my peers who are planning or who are in this journey, I tell them that there is, you will never be prepared for it. And the B rule of this game is that there is just no playbook, and there are no shortcuts. So, it's like a change usually is in the format of, a physical change or an emotional change, but this roller coaster takes you through completely, right? Professionally, physically, emotionally. I remember that date when, she was born. A day before that, Lochan, I was watching Netflix and I was like a normal human being, right? I did my yoga, I was cooking, I went back, I was enjoying my Netflix, and that's when my water broke. And the next day I was expected to breastfeed, and I was like, what is this even about? I mean, so far, uh, when you spend those 9 months, you think the finish line is when the delivery is going to happen, to only realize that that's just the starting line. So yeah,
Correct.
so yes,
The light has just been
just
changed.
yeah, the game has just begun, and I think that by itself. So yeah, people tell you, but I'm just saying that each one lives their own story, bases their own circumstances, and can't be fully prepared with what's about to come.
Akanksha, what about you? And I know your journey was not that smooth as well. So so what was how prepared were you on what's going to happen?
Yeah, so Lochan, I remember when I think maybe when I started my career and right up into maybe 5 years into it, I didn't want to be a mother. And I was pretty clear that this parenting thing is not for me and I want to live my own life and whatever. I think it was my husband who really did feel like, no, but I'd like one, that kind of started warming me up to the idea. And I said, okay, fine, we'll do it at this particular stage of life, and this is how it's going to be. And we decided, and I put timelines on it and everything. And then I visited a doctor who said, you can't have children, you're infertile. And I swear, like, give a woman and tell her something, this is something you cannot do. And not only will she bloody do it, but she will prove to you that you were wrong the whole way through, right? And like anything that any part of me that said I don't want to be a mother changed the day I was told I can't be one. I said, now I'm going to be one. And it became my single focused desire. Like, it's all I wanted. Um, so yeah, I mean, of course, I went through a lot of fertility treatment. I was undergoing IVF, and I think that had its own challenges at the workspace as well, because IVF is not a straight road, right? You have multiple maybe moments before you have a positive, if you have a positive, and you have a lot of moments of look, I might be pregnant and I might not be, but I need to behave like a pregnant person in terms of the bed rest and the slowing down at work many times before you actually do get pregnant. So you're that woman who cried wolf so many times, and it ends up being that story. I was blessed to have a workspace and a manager who kind of got it. And I think it was not so hard for me to navigate that, right? But your own guilt takes over in that sense. And I think I started dealing with that guilt of the dual identity even before my baby came, because there were so many times that I needed to take time off of work, and I needed to say, I have to have this treatment. I'm going to be admitted in the hospital today. I don't know when I'm going to get out. I may get out tomorrow. I may. So there was a lot of that even before my daughter came, right? And when finally it did happen that, okay, I'm pregnant, and I realized that most people can tell you, can tell their workspace 3 months later and stuff. It's that the norm is at the end of the first trimester is when you start revealing. But I had had multiple first trimesters before. I had had miscarriages before that. So I had shared it. And then there was this feeling of, do I tell you now? Or do I hold on until it's for sure? But if I hold on, then you're going to expect me to travel, and you're going to expect me to do certain things that I cannot do. And so there was all of that. Of course, I'm taking this moment to sort of send a message out there to anybody who might be struggling with the same thing, to say, you know what, they get it, right? And if they don't get it, it doesn't matter. They have to get it or not, but you have to do what you need to do, because
Right.
that loss is not something you want to spend a lot of time looking back with regret on
Yeah.
or something like that, right? So, having
Absolutely.
said that, I did have a workplace that was extremely encouraging, and they said, you know what, do what you need to do, take the rest that you need to do. Um, and I mean, I had a lot of, it was obviously very challenging because you're also constantly going into it with, has my maternity leave already started? Because you're already trying to, like, you're treating yourself from the get go as a very, very fragile object when nobody else really gets it. There is that tendency of a lot of people, I think, to say, it's not such a big deal. We've all been pregnant before. We've all handled it. Ab ho gaya. There's a lot of advice that you also get when people start finding out, because that's the flip side of sharing, right? The flip side of coming out with it right at the beginning is that you get a lot of unsolicited advice, and that never stops. So it's great preparation, really. But I think one of those pieces of advice was always, now stop thinking about all that. Now stop thinking about your fertility treatment and the fact that it was difficult. And I'm just like, I can't stop thinking about it, because if I stop thinking about it, something can happen, right? And I mean, for example, I conceived twins, and I lost one way late into my first trimester. So for me, that was a reminder that I can't stop thinking about this. I need to keep on treating myself as somebody who needs that flexibility at work, who needs that special attention, who needs to basically prioritize this pregnancy now over anything else, And so here I was, somebody who had said, I don't want to be a mom. I don't want children. I'm a career woman. My career is going to be all, I'm going to climb up this ladder and I'm going to wave hello to everybody from the top. To suddenly saying, I don't know if I need to take a step down, I need to take a break, and I need to step away. And I don't know what tomorrow really holds for me, but I am going to just put this in focus right now. Um, and yeah, I think from then on, my story, as I did share, is that I took all the steps, the down, much more than up. I've taken all the breaks I needed to. I will talk about this later more, but I took a long maternity break. I took flexi hours when I got back. I took what I needed to, and I think my journey to motherhood prepared me to just advocate for myself at the beginning. And I'm not saying it was ever easy, it never is. I think when you hold yourself accountable and you feel like you have a certain responsibility, it's always hard to ask for something. But I think it's helpful to remind yourself that your responsibility, first and foremost, is now for this little being that is wholly dependent on you. And the office is not wholly dependent on you. So I think that helps. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what all will change.
So the so that just brings me to the question of saying, both of you have had very different, journeys to the point of having a baby, right? And Swati, like, in your case, you just said I was Netflix and chilling quite literally. And then,
Yeah.
next day I'm like, here, there is somebody who's crying and saying, okay, feed me. And Akansha, your journey has been more about, is it not? Am I not? Am I going through this? And all of those conversations. So, when you were thinking, I mean, at some point when you have gotten hold of, okay, what the baby needs, how it is, etc., and now you're saying, okay, I do have a career to get back to. um, what were some of the fears that were probably running in your mind, on both fronts, right? And is there something that you did, or more importantly, how much of those fears actually proved to be true? I think that's a bigger question that I want to ask. Like, women do have apprehensions as they're coming back.
Yeah.
How much of it came true? How much of it was just in your head? So, Swati, if you want to
Yeah.
share that.
So as you rightly said, Lochan, so I think the first 3 months after delivery, every single day is like, I think I frame it as, it's doing RCA. Why is the baby crying
Hmm.
today? And you're just figuring out, and the baby's just crying and you have no answers. Okay. But after 3 to 4 months, and I think for any new mother listening to this, because I think the panic starts from first month. Is my life going to be the same? I used to look at myself in the mirror and I used to feel so bad. And postpartum depression is a real thing. We don't talk about it, but it's a real thing. M-
Hmm.
Motherly instincts don't come from day one, right? Mother, I
Hmm.
was not feeling that. I was just crying the whole day. It's actually a tapasya, right?
Hmm.
You are just awake, sleepless nights, cluster feelings, and you're going through all of that in
Hmm.
first 3 months. After 3 to 4 months, things start stabilizing. I would say they start becoming slightly better. And you as a person, as a mother, start understanding the baby more than anybody else, and you become the best doctor. Like if the baby's crying, it immediately clicks you why. And that's natural. It's I think it's with every other mother. Now 3 to 4 months is when you start coming back to at least feeling normal and have started embracing that change. At least that's what happened with me, and
Hmm.
that's when it clicked me. So it was by fourth month, we had come back. So I'd gone to my in-laws place. None of my parents could come, so I'd got to my in-laws place for delivery. And then roughly around 3 4 months is when we came back, and it was me and my husband. And now we were like, how do we handle this? Like we have a baby, and from 4 to 6 months, Lochan, being a overthinker and a over planner person that I am, I started thinking about now how will I get back to work. you know I started doing
Hmm.
that mock of how will I tomorrow, if I have to just go to office, whom will I leave my baby with? you know will the baby,
Hmm.
so the kind of fears were, one, in my absence, will the husband or the nanny or the support system, and I think support system is something that I'll come to, because I think according to me the crux of the entire matter is the support system, but I'll come to that part in a
Hmm.
while.
Hmm.
So will the husband and nanny be able to soothe the baby? Will the baby accept the milk that I've expressed, and so on and so forth? And second, there were some fundamental questions like, will I be able to do slides and Excel and problem solving the way I used to? Will my fingers remember
Hmm.
all those shortcuts and all of that? As funny as that may sound, but I was really worried. You know, have I lost that skill set? Is it still with me? And the third
Hmm.
was, I was feeling extremely nervous about going to office. I felt, will people recognize me? Because also these 6 months, uh, it's not a beach vacation. You are like on a more rigorous schedule than ever, and you barely have time to be
Hmm.
in touch with anybody in office, right? So, will the dynamics, and in my case the office had also changed, so I was like, okay, it'll be a new building.
Hmm.
I was feeling like a small kid who's going to a new school with all those
Hmm.
apprehensions. Will people remember me and stuff like that? So there are all these concerns that keep boiling in your head. And of course, a mother, I think, as Akanksha pointed out, she's the most, I feel she's the most fierce and strong woman who can just turn the tables around if asked to, but at the same time she's also the most vulnerable person when it comes to the baby, right? And these apprehensions, I think the amount of clarity, I think, which Akanksha is also talking about, uh, as a person, you used to have certain beliefs before the baby was there. You used to think, I am a certain person, I have certain traits, I like to do this and I like to do that. But once the baby comes, you are suddenly like a it's some hormonal change, but you are a different person. You have very clear boundaries of what I can do and what I cannot. Of course, there are guilt, and there is mom guilt, which we'll talk about. Maybe that's a real thing, but you become far more clearer about what you want. And I was desperately waiting to go back to office, but at the same time, I was super clear that the priority number one is still the baby. If there's something that will impact that side of my life, then I can't sustain the other one. But yeah, to answer your question, I think the fears were largely around going back to a new school. Will the baby be okay without me? Because that was the first time I will leave the baby. And the third was, um, the entire skill set thing. But I realized that once you have learned driving of a car, if you don't drive for a few months, doesn't matter. That, after 6 months when you'll drive, you'll be
Yeah.
back in form. So that is the biggest learning. Nothing goes away. You're still that same person. Logically speaking, you have everything that was required. But yeah, in terms of going back to school, I was fortunate that the most senior person, the co-founder herself, um, and I would like to take her name because it was a small gesture from her side, but today it means a lot to me. So Akriti Chopra was there. She said, when I went and the security guard asked me, "Ki ma'am, aapko to pehle nahi dekha hai." Of course, that it hurt me because I was with the firm for 4 5 years. But then immediately Akriti came in and then said, that Arianda Rajan, Rajan, so good to have. And then she took me through the office, and she comforted me through the entire office tour, and she made me comfortable. But these small gestures like mean a lot. So till date, it's been 2 years, but I do remember that part.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing. So just the feeling that you're welcomed, I think
Exactly.
also reduces the apprehension of going to a new school,
Exactly.
first day of school
Yeah. Yeah.
conversation. How was it for you, Akanksha? You had earlier mentioned that you'd taken a slightly longer maternity leave.
Yes.
So how was
Yeah.
the journey back?
Right. No, I think some of what Swati said really rings true for me as well. I think so. For us, what happened was that when we were, this was COVID time. So 2020, we relocated from Bangalore back to Delhi, and then it was all work from home. When I found out I was pregnant, it was all work from home. This was, end of 2020 and beginning of 2021. I had my daughter in April 21, so we had the second wave. Most nobody was really going into the office, but at some point later that year everybody had started going into the office, and I was on my maternity leave, and I had moved back to Delhi even from a work perspective. So I had shifted offices from the Bangalore office to the Delhi office, which meant that I had no idea what the office building was, who these people were, security guards, the guy who helps you park your car. Like, these are people that you unknowingly you smile at them every morning and stuff like that, and suddenly if they don't know you, they look at you with a little bit of a suspicion. I remember my access card not working because it basically hadn't been activated to the new office, and it's the most like, it's a very bizarre feeling, a very unwanted feeling when it goes red, and they say, "Madam, access nahi hai." And who are you anyway? So I think these were very real experiences that I also had, that I wish they may not think much of it, but I think there's a message right there for organizations to think about. Like, you did a mock-up, Swati, of your work, your way back into work. Do a mock-up of a person coming back after a long leave, right? Where she parks her car. Maybe you can give them, everybody knows your joining date, right? Everyone knows your return date. So maybe do that mock-up. Maybe see where she's going to park her car so that she has that spot, because on day one she may not have the sticker, right?
Mm,
It may have, they all lose access after periods of being dormant, right? Your
mm,
access card, maybe let people know so and so is going to be coming. She might
mm,
introduce herself and this is her name. I mean, it's
mm,
okay to do that little
mm,
thing. So I think that is something that honestly makes somebody feel a little bit less alien. And
mm.
especially people who've been with the organization before, we're not new
Correct.
joinees, right? And I think this would address one of the very large fears that, like Swati, I also had of, do I even know anything anymore?
Mm,
Right. So I took, like I said, I took a long mat leave, and I so 6 months is what is given, but I took about 9 months and then a month of half day working,
mm,
which was from home. So by the time I returned to work, it was almost 10 months after my daughter was born, and it's almost a year, right?
mm,
And it's a very, very long time. And I think you play it up so much more in your own head.
mm,
And I called my manager, I think maybe a couple of months before I returned, saying, tell me the truth, I shouldn't come back, no? And she said, what's wrong with you? And I said, I don't know anything anymore. And there was this whole new team, there were new people that had been hired,
mm,
the business had grown tremendously. And I said, I was nothing, and I'm just going to come back and I'm going to be an even smaller nothing,
mm,
and she said, I mean, bless her really, because she, not a mom herself, but she said, listen, Akanksha, you don't forget the work that you know. You may not know the nitty-gritties of what we're currently doing, that you'll pick up in a week, right? You
mm,
were working here and you were important to us for the skill sets that you have. You've only sharpened those skill sets by becoming a mother. Now your time management is stronger. You multitask better. You operate on very little sleep, very little food. You know how to preempt disaster faster than most other people, because actually those are things that a new mom actually just learns overnight,
mm, mm.
and whether you want to or not, it just happens
It
that
just
way,
happens,
right?
yeah.
And she said that we needed your skills before, but we need these augmented skills now. So don't for a minute, she said, we're waiting. So don't give me these shockers where you call me and say I shouldn't come back, because I was
Mm,
trying to save myself the or my ego from the embarrassment of, I was convinced they're going to fire me. I was
mm,
convinced I'm going to go back and they're going to realize that she took such a long absence. She knows nothing anymore. Sideline her and get her out, And
mm,
because my manager and I shared a very long relationship for the past many years, I felt like I could take that liberty and call her, and she would be like, yeah, you know what? I think you should put in your papers. And she's like,
mm,
do not shock me like this. You're coming back. We're waiting for you to come back. Projects are waiting for you. So I think that's also another thing that really went a long way in my feeling like people are actually waiting for me. So I won't just be like a seat warmer when I get back. I
mm,
will I will matter, and the work I will be doing will be important. Right. And
mm,
I think that sort of nudge is required because, you know, the organization I was with, we had HR calls, right? And those were great, right? HR calling you and saying back to work, and reassuring you that if you need to take some more time off, if you need flexibility, it's totally okay. But there were still other things that people did which was outside of what they were supposed to do, which really made a difference. So I will share
mm,
another example. The CHRO of the organization at the time was heading our business as well. So he knew me closely, and he called me and he said, this is going to be the hardest bridge back, because he said you've done many hard things in your life before, but this is going to be one of the hardest things. So firstly he started this with the whole relatability, I hear you, I see you sort of
mm,
dynamic. And then he said, the first thing I want you to plan when you get back to work is, when are you taking your vacation, your first vacation? And I said, what are you
mm,
talking about? Like, I'm getting back
mm,
after almost a year's break. And he said, that was not holiday. You
mm,
need a holiday. And he said,
mm,
so you took that break, but you were not on a break. You were
mm,
working harder than you've ever worked before, and you need a vacation. So get back, sit down with your manager, and decide when is your next vacation. Right.
mm.
And he said, report back to me and tell me when you're taking your next vacation. And I think,
Wow. Okay.
because you're just like, what? You want me to
Yeah.
take a vacation? So I think, honestly, like, all props to these people who did these things just out of empathy, out of kindness, but also out of respect for a new mother and
Mm,
understanding both. I mean, my CHRO and my manager were not mothers, right? My
mm,
CHRO was a man, my manager was not yet a mom. So to get it, to see it and say, I may not feel it entirely, but I see you, I
mm,
understand.
mm,
It changes everything. And I
mm,
think you come back with so much more motivation and you come back
mm,
saying, okay, maybe I'll be able to do this.
mm. That's such an important message, right? Like to just feel seen, and this is so important for you to call out. Like everybody assumes, oh, she's been on a 6 month leave. What happened? Okay, and we also have people who make these loose comments of saying, oh, you were on a 6 month break.
Yeah.
And I keep telling, it's not a break, it's a leave. It's not a maternity break, it's a maternity leave. There is a, there's a difference between the two. It's like sick leave. You don't say I took a sick break, right? So you say sick leave.
Yeah.
So it is a space, it's a time where somebody's, undergoing some major life change, and there is something changing for them as well. But this is such a real fear in both of you, and I do want to call this out. Being such smart professionals yourselves, do have did have these fears of saying, have I forgotten everything, or even your basic excels and so on. And just even acknowledging that, don't worry, and we are here, and we'll help you come up to speed, itself has just, smoothened maybe a little bit of the process. And I can say this, that I'm sure if the two of you feeling, there are so many more women out there who feeling it but not saying it, may not even be acknowledging it themselves. And somewhere like what you did, Akansha, they would probably be preempting that firing and just themselves say, okay, let me just put in my papers, because that's easier to do than being told that you're being sidelined and now you're being, not, you're asked not to come back. Or the whole thing of starting or feeling like I'm going to start all over again, just maybe feeling too overwhelming. And what organizations can do, managers can do, colleagues can do is such a simple, small gestures, but it creates spaces. um so we are seeing more women coming back to work. They aren't expected to stay at home. I know there was a time where it was just given that, okay, now that you're expecting, okay, you've quit your job. So very funny incident. I had taken a career break, and I kind of decided to step out of my current corporate role and said, okay, I'm going to figure out what's next for me before I jump into doing anything else. At that time, I didn't have anything in mind of whether it's off experiences or what is it going to be. And I remember I told my help at home that, Acha, ab se, I'm going to be home. I've quit my job. And she said, Acha, Didi, aap pregnant ho? Okay, so, and I had to clarify to her to say, no, I'm not pregnant. So the expectation
Yeah.
is very given to say that, okay, now that you're expecting, you're not going back. But now slowly that's changing. We do see a lot of women are not necessarily expected to be staying at home, but at the same time, the whole challenge, right, where biologically women still remain the primary caregivers, no matter how much the partners are supporting, helpful, and kudos to, good shout out to all those who are making that change in the society. I don't want to say they're doing a great job, but I'm saying at least they're doing their bit in making that difference.